I've already heard the knock on my door, and I don't have to check to know what's waiting outside. It's far too late to save me. So I might as well get this story out there before I meet my inevitable fate. I have been studying the patterns of the unexplained disappearances for as long as I can remember. I have seen countless stories of people who woke up to a loved one gone. There's never any evidence, and nobody has been able to find any relation between all of the people who seemingly just vanished into thin air. Nobody. Except me. I know what is happening because it has happened to multiple people who were a big part of my life. First, it was my brother. 5 years ago, I got a phone call from him. I had stayed in frequent contact with him for my entire life, but having families of our own limited the time we could spend together. When we did communicate, it was almost always over text or in person, so I was kind of surprised that he was calling me, especially at midnight. I answered on the third ring, and he frantically told me that there was some kind of creature at his front door. He explained that he had heard 3 loud bangs on his front door at exactly 12 a.m. He looked through the window and saw something that he simply refused to describe, no matter how much I questioned him. After hearing 3 more loud bangs, I could hear him starting to hyperventilate. I told him to answer it, saying that it was probably just a prank. He obliged, walking towards the front door and unlocking it. I heard him open the door, but he didn't say anything after. "Jonathan?" I questioned. Silence. His house was only a 10-minute drive away, but I made it in 5. Jonathan has a history of heroin usage, and I was worried that he hallucinated and passed out. Silently praying that he wasn't hurt, I parked in front of his driveway and noticed that the front door was still open. I walked inside, careful not to wake his kids. He had been a single dad ever since his wife died in a car accident 2 years prior. And then, just when I started to think he would make a full recovery, Jonathan turned to drugs once again, trying to numb the pain. He still managed to be a decent parent, trying to hide his addiction from them as well as he possibly could. I expected to find him lying on the floor unconscious. I instead found his 2 kids standing near the doorway, with blank expressions on their faces. "Hey guys, do you know where your dad is?" I asked, but they both didn't respond. They didn't even acknowledge I was there. They just continued to look at the doorway. The police never got any leads. The investigation was dropped just a few days after my brother's disappearance. His kids moved to their grandparents' house and still live there today. Although it traumatized me, I eventually managed to move on and focus on my own life. That was until 3 months ago, when I got a call from my mom. My mom had never failed to see the good in people, whether it be a friendly neighbor or a stranger in a dark alley. She never thought that she had any reason to be afraid. She was the type of person to always answer spam calls, respond to every email, and answer the door, no matter who it was. Someone could be in trouble, and their lives could be in your hands. She always told me that when I questioned her ways of living. I'm usually more skeptical, letting the phone ring when it's an unknown number and being wary who is standing at my front doorstep. Despite our difference in opinions, I have always been close to her, and she, much like my brother, usually turned to me whenever they had a problem that needed fixing. My mom's faith in everyone ended up being the reason she died. She was living alone at the time and was terrified to be awoken by a knock at her door. At exactly 12 a.m., I told her not to answer the door before checking to see who it was. Despite my advice, she made the decision to open the door instantly. Without even checking, I screamed at her to stop, but it was already too late. Through my phone, I heard the sound of a door opening, followed by absolute silence. After the loss of 2 family members, I decided to do some more research. I found that there are countless people who have experienced similar things. It was tough, but I documented when each known incident happened and discovered that it can occur worldwide, averaging around once every 27 days. I'm still in contact with a lot of people who have lost family members because of the creature, and none of us have ever seen it with our own eyes. It's 3:46 a.m. right now. The knocking started when I always knew it would. 12 a.m. on the dot. Unlike its previous victims, I decided not to let this creature inside my home. Instead, I let it continue to knock on my door. When around an hour had passed, I began to grow accustomed to it. While it was still unsettling to me, I was able to make myself believe that the creature standing on my front porch couldn't hurt me. Not until I at least opened the door. A while later, I went to bed. The second I closed my bedroom door, the knocking stopped. The silence that followed was short-lived, as it soon began again. However, there was something different about it. The knocking wasn't coming from my front door anymore. It was coming from my bedroom door. It won't stop. I have nowhere to run, nowhere to hide. All I can do is wait. Hey guys, it's been a while. The first thing I tried after posting part 1 was to open the window. However, it didn't budge. The key for it happened to be in the same room, so I unlocked it and tried again. Same results. Getting desperate, I attempted to break it open with the lamp that was next to my bed. The lamp shattered, but there was no damage to the window. There's no bathroom connected to the bedroom, so all I had as a source of water was a half-full plastic bottle that I had left in there earlier. My water supply ran out within the first 24 hours. And no, the creature did not leave at sunrise. It continued its usual knocking. After the sun rose and it didn't leave, I called the police. I was relieved to hear the cliché 911, "What's your emergency?" and was even more relieved to hear the operator tell me that help was on its way. After I explained that there was an intruder in my home, I felt that telling what really happened would just make me sound crazy. The ETA was supposed to be 5 to 10 minutes, and I began to get worried after 15 minutes passed. Then it was a half hour. Then it was a full hour. Still, there were no signs of help. The lone window in my room faced my backyard, so I couldn't even see if a police car had arrived at my house. I never heard any sirens, which is common for home invasion scenarios. I also know that I never heard anyone entering or exiting the house. At least, if it did happen, I couldn't hear it over the knocking that was steadily getting louder. By the end of the second day, I was beginning to run out of options. With no food or water available, I debated with myself over whether or not I should call a family member or friend. I ultimately decided that, no matter how rough it got, I wouldn't put anyone else at risk. By the third day, the knocking was becoming annoyingly loud. At first, it sounded like a normal knock, but it slowly evolved into something that would drown out the sound of a scream. This creature seemed like it was simply not going to leave, until I answered the door. I knew how that would end, so I decided to stay alive as long as I possibly could. Instead of letting it in, I did the only thing that seemed semi-reasonable at the time. It was a long shot, but definitely worth a try. I knocked back. And it wasn't just a normal knock either. I was knocking as hard as I possibly could. I obviously wasn't at full strength after being locked in my bedroom for over 2 days, but it was still more than enough to startle the creature. After a couple minutes, it stopped knocking, and I did the same. The silence that took place as a result was more than enough to make me start knocking again. I don't know how to describe the feeling, but I had grown so accustomed to hearing the heavy knocking on my bedroom door that I couldn't handle suddenly being engulfed in absolute silence. I was the only knocking for the next 20 minutes or so. It could have been more or less than that, since I was rarely checking the time. My phone was at 40% when I got trapped in the room. I had left my charger in there and had tried to charge my phone, but it didn't work. It seemed like there wasn't any power coming from the outlet. I had the same result with the other outlets as well. So either my charger was broken, or the outlets weren't getting power. Either way, my phone battery was not going up anytime soon, so I had to use it sparingly. There are no clocks in my bedroom, meaning most of the time I didn't know what time it was. All I could do was keep track of the days. After 20 minutes of knocking by myself, the creature joined in once again. This time, it seemed angrier. Its knocking started just as suddenly as it stopped, and I was sent stumbling backwards because of the power that came with each consecutive knock. I could see the door shaking, and the sound of the knocking was almost deafening by that point. Honestly, I'm really surprised the door stayed upright. For the next few hours, that same knocking continued, and my door seemed to defy physics, as the center of it literally bent inwards because of the knocks. But besides that, it was not at all affected. Now sleep deprived and dehydrated, I had the brilliant idea to look under my bedroom door and see what that thing really looked like. All I saw underneath was complete darkness. I looked up at the door then looked back underneath it. And my eyes were locked with someone else's. The creature's eyes mocked me from underneath my bedroom door. I think it even winked at me before I screamed and jumped back into my bed. A couple minutes after that, the knocking's volume vastly decreased. It was still there, but was now back at a normal volume. I was starting to relax a bit more, thinking it had finally given up. Instead, I heard a voice coming from right outside the door. "All right, you're a stubborn one," it said to me. "So I'm going to give you 15 more minutes to exist on this earth. You may call your loved ones and do whatever else you want to before you die. I will allow your charger to work again. After 15 minutes is up, you must open this bedroom door, or I will do it for you. And trust me, you don't want that to happen." The knocking then stopped, and the timer on my phone was set without me doing anything. I don't really have any loved ones left to call. I do have some old friends that I have a lot of history with, but I haven't talked to any of them in ages. So I spent my 15 minutes finishing up this update. The knocking has started again. The timer just went off, and now I have to do it. Goodbye, world. I'm going to open the door. 17 days. I've been trapped in this bedroom for over 2 weeks, and I don't think it'll be much longer than that. There's something that I forgot to mention in the previous update. During the 15 minutes that the creature had given me, the first thing I did was try the window, and it worked. During the 15 minutes the creature had given me, the first thing I did try was the window, and it worked. I could only open it halfway, so getting out wasn't an option, but it was open wide enough that I could fit my arm through. There was nothing but silence coming from the other side of the door, so I don't think the creature was there when I called my cousin. He only lives about 15 minutes away from me. It was difficult to explain my situation without sounding mentally insane, but I managed to get him to believe that I was homesick and couldn't leave the house. I started typing the update right after talking to him, and somehow finished in time. He obliged when I asked him to come to my bedroom window and give me some food and water, and he thankfully arrived before my time was up. I thanked him and watched his car drive away before the knocking began again. Over the noise, I could hear a voice say, "Your time is up. What is your decision?" "I'm not going to let you in, and I know you can't enter by yourself," I responded. That was a bold statement, since there was a high chance that it could enter by itself. And all that would do is make my death even more painful. Thankfully, it worked. The voice never responded, and the knocking simply got louder. I glanced at the window and was surprised to see that it was now closed. I hadn't closed it, and there was nobody else there who could have closed it. I didn't hear any sound either, but it was closed and I was unable to open it again. My cousin had given me a month's worth of water, telling me that the water would make me feel better, along with a week's worth of food. I ate all of the refrigerator stuff first, and everything was gone within a week. But the knocking hadn't stopped. I had a lot of water left, so survival wasn't an issue. If I was willing to deal with the excruciating hunger pains. Time passed even slower during the second week with no food. Eating was basically the only thing I could do, besides laying in the bed on my phone. Thankfully, my phone battery has not gone down, and there is Wi-Fi, so I at least had something to do. However, that can get very boring more quickly than you may think. More recently, I have begun to find myself staring blankly at the wall for hours, in some kind of daze. I think the lack of being able to have a conversation with another human is starting to get to me. I haven't eaten in a week, and water does nothing to help the constant pain I have in my stomach. I can barely move, and I think my muscles are starting to deteriorate. Maybe this is what the creature wants. Maybe it enjoys watching its victims suffer for as long as possible. And maybe it can enter the room if it really wants to. But it chooses to give people more slow deaths if they decide not to open the door for it. These are just theories, of course. I truly have no idea what this thing is capable of. But it is possible that I have found a weakness. It finds a new victim every 27 days. If I can survive until then, who knows what will happen? I could be free, or the creature could just kill me. I don't know if I want to know which one is more likely. One thing that has made this wait even more agonizing is having to live with the memory of one of my best friends dying because of my selfishness. Needing some kind of human interaction. A few days ago, I broke my self-implemented rule of not dragging anyone else into this mess. I knew that my sanity was dwindling, and came to the conclusion that I would never be able to make it another 10 days. Not without talking to a single person, excluding the demonic creature that continues to pound on my bedroom door, with no signs of stopping. I called a good friend of mine that would be very likely to show up. I explained that I was sick and sort of put myself in quarantine, but that I would love to talk to him through my window for a bit, if he was okay with it. I warned him not to go inside the house, and he agreed, saying that he didn't want to get sick. An hour later, he sent me a text that will ever have a place in my memory. "Hey, I'm out front. Your front door is open, so I'm just gonna go through there. I'm wearing a breathing mask, so unless you're super contagious, I'll be fine." "No, don't come inside. Just come to the bedroom window," I replied. But it was too late. I heard his footsteps enter the house. The knocking stopped, so there was nothing preventing me from hearing his screams. They lasted for at least 10 minutes, each one sounding more terrified than the last. Finally, they stopped, and the knocking resumed without the creature saying a word. I don't know if it's ever going to stop. The knowledge that my friend will never see his family again has been worse than the knocking and hunger will ever be. I used to think that I would never give up if my life depended on it, but I think I've lost all hope at this point. I'm still not completely used to the knocking, and can only deal with the pain for so long, before it becomes unbearable. I know that if I open my door, I know that it'll all be over, and I will hopefully be at peace. But there is something in the back of my mind that keeps me from doing so. All I want is to make it out of this room alive. The creature has offered me a deal. If I open the door right now, I will die painlessly, and I won't have to live like this anymore. I think I'm going to do it.